The Book of Judges. A time of heroes and turmoil in ancient Israel. We often hear of Samson, Gideon, Deborah. But what about Ehud? Ehud stands as a judge, a deliverer for his people. His story, though less known, bursts with intrigue and daring. Today we'll delve into the captivating tale of Ehud. Ehud emerges in this tumultuous era. His story, tucked away in the 3rd chapter of Judges, unveils a tale of courage, cunning and divine intervention. Join me as we journey back in time. Let us understand the world of Ehud and the extraordinary feat that etched his name in the annals of biblical history. Ehud's story sets itself apart from other judges. It captivates us with its sheer audacity. Ehud wasn't a towering warrior like Samson, nor a charismatic leader like Deborah. He was a man of cunning intellect, a master strategist. He used his wit and a rather unique physical characteristic to deliver his people. He was left-handed. In a time when left-handedness was unusual, even taboo, Ehud turned his perceived weakness into a devastating advantage. This seemingly insignificant detail forms the crux of his daring plan. It underscores the brilliance of his strategy against the oppressive Moabite King Eglon. Join me as we delve deeper into the world of Ehud. After Joshua's death, the Israelites entered a turbulent period. The Book of Judges tells us that they repeatedly strayed from God's path. They turned to foreign gods, abandoning the very faith that had delivered them from Egypt. This cycle of disobedience inevitably led to dire consequences. Each time the Israelites strayed, God allowed a neighboring nation to conquer them. Among these oppressive powers were the Philistines, the Canaanites, and in Ehud's time, the Moabites. The Moabites, residing east of the Dead Sea, were distant relatives of the Israelites. Despite this kinship, they harbored animosity towards Israel. The Moabites saw an opportunity in Israel's weakness. They crossed the Jordan River and subjugated the Israelites, plunging them into 18 long years of oppression. Eglon's reign was marked by cruelty and exploitation. The Israelites were subjected to heavy taxation, forced labor, and constant fear. Their lives, once filled with promise in the Promised Land, were now shrouded in darkness and despair. Eglon, described as a very fat man in the Bible, became a symbol of excess and oppression. The land, once flowing with milk and honey, now groaned under the weight of Moabite tyranny. Yet, even in their despair, a flicker of hope remained. The Israelites, remembering the God of their ancestors, began to cry out for deliverance. The Israelites' cry for help was not a cry of defiance, but one of repentance. They acknowledged their transgressions, their abandonment of God's laws. They humbled themselves before the Almighty, hoping for a sign, a glimmer of hope in their desperate situation. The Book of Judges tells us, "And the Israelites cried out to the Lord." This was not a mere whisper of despair, but a collective, heartfelt plea. They recognized that their suffering was a consequence of their actions, and only God could deliver them from this predicament. God, in his infinite mercy, heard the Israelites' plea, and so he prepared to answer their cry, not with a mighty warrior or a charismatic prophet, but with a left-handed man named Ehud. Ehud belonged to the tribe of Benjamin, known for their skill in warfare and their use of the left hand in battle. However, Ehud was not a renowned warrior, at least not in the traditional sense. The Bible describes him as a man who was left-handed. This seemingly insignificant detail would become central to his daring plan. Ehud was chosen by God to be Israel's deliverer. Ehud's story reminds us that God often chooses the unexpected, the seemingly insignificant, to achieve his purposes. Ehud's left-handedness, a potential source of prejudice and mockery, would become the instrument of Eglon's downfall and Israel's liberation. In a time when strength and military prowess were highly valued, Ehud's left-handedness might have seemed like a liability. Left-handed individuals were often viewed with suspicion, their difference perceived as a weakness. Yet God often works through the unexpected, turning perceived disadvantages into instruments of his divine plan. Ehud's left-handedness was not a mere physical attribute. It was a strategic advantage waiting to be exploited. In a world dominated by right-handed warriors, Ehud's left-handedness made him unpredictable, his movements unfamiliar and therefore harder to anticipate. Ehud's story reminds us that God sees beyond outward appearances. God had chosen Ehud, the left-handed Israelite, to be the instrument of his deliverance, to break the chains of Moabite oppression. The time came for the Israelites to deliver their annual tribute to King Eglon. This was a humiliating reminder of their subjugation, a time when they were forced to bow before their oppressor. However, this seemingly routine event would provide the perfect opportunity for Ehud to execute his daring plan. Ehud, a man of cunning and foresight, had crafted a plan as sharp as the weapon he concealed. Ehud had a double-edged sword made, a cubit long, a weapon specifically designed to exploit his left-handedness. He hid this deadly blade under his clothes, strapped to his right thigh, a place where no one would expect a left-handed man to carry a weapon. With the tribute prepared and the deadly secret in place, Ehud requested an audience with King Eglon. The sword Ehud crafted was no ordinary weapon. It was a testament to his meticulous planning, his understanding of the task ahead. It was a double-edged sword, a cubit in length, about 18 inches, small enough to be concealed, yet deadly enough to ensure a swift and silent execution. The sword's double-edged design meant that Ehud could strike with either edge, giving him greater versatility and increasing his chances of success. Ehud's choice of a short sword was deliberate. The shorter blade, easily concealed and wielded with one hand, was the perfect weapon for the task at hand. This meticulously crafted weapon, born out of necessity and ingenuity, was more than just a tool for Ehud. Ehud, carrying the tribute and the weight of his people's hopes, stood before King Eglon. He presented himself as a humble servant, his demeanour respectful, his words carefully chosen to avoid suspicion. The king, used to receiving such tributes, remained oblivious to the danger lurking beneath Ehud's calm exterior. "I have a secret message for you, O king," Ehud declared, his voice steady, his gaze unwavering. This was the moment of truth, the point of no return. Eglon, intrigued by the prospect of a secret message, dismissed his attendants. "Silence!" commanded Eglon, eager to receive this clandestine information. With the room cleared, Ehud and Eglon were alone. Ehud and Eglon stood alone in the upper room, a place of supposed privacy and power, but which would soon transform into a stage for a daring act of defiance. The air hung heavy with anticipation, the silence punctuated only by the sound of their breaths. Eglon, consumed by curiosity, remained oblivious to the danger lurking before him. The upper room, a symbol of Eglon's authority, was a place where he received dignitaries, issued decrees, and exerted his dominion over the Israelites. The irony was not lost on Ehud. This very room, a symbol of oppression, would become the king's tomb. "I have a message from God for you," Ehud declared, his voice steady, his gaze fixed on the corpulent king. With a swift, practiced motion, he drew the double-edged sword from its hiding place beneath his cloak. Eglon, startled by Ehud's sudden movement, had no time to react. The blade plunged deep into his belly, the force of the blow amplified by Ehud's left-handed thrust, an angle unexpected, impossible to defend against. The king, accustomed to deference and luxury, now faced the cold reality of his mortality. Ehud, his grip unwavering, did not hesitate. He twisted the blade, ensuring the wound was fatal, the damage irreparable. Eglon's body slumped back onto his throne, his reign of terror brought to an abrupt and bloody end. "Ehud!" His heart pounding, withdrew the blood-soaked blade. He surveyed the scene, his mind racing, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Knowing that time was of the essence, Ehud acted quickly. He closed and locked the doors of the upper room, trapping the stench of death within, buying himself precious moments. He knew that the king's attendants, accustomed to their master's leisurely habits, would not be expecting anything out of the ordinary. The silence of the palace was both a blessing and a curse. Ehud, moving with the agility of a hunted animal, made his way through the labyrinthine corridors of the palace. He knew that every passing moment increased the risk of discovery, of being trapped within the very walls that had witnessed his audacious act. Reaching the courtyard, he could see the first hints of dawn breaking over the horizon. It was a sight that filled him with a mix of hope and trepidation. He reached the city gates, his heart pounding in his chest. The guards, drowsy from the night shift, paid little attention to the lone figure slipping out into the pre-dawn light. Once outside the city walls, Ehud didn't hesitate. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across Jericho, a sense of unease settled over the Moabite garrison. The routine of the day was disrupted by whispered conversations and anxious glances. The king, their imposing leader, was late for his pronouncements. Rumours churned out speculation. Where was Eglon? Why had he not emerged from his chambers? The king's attendants, initially amused, turned to trepidation. They dared to approach the locked doors. Their knocks unanswered heightened the sense of dread. One servant, bolder than the others, peered through a crack. The sight sent a chill through his veins, a gasp escaping his lips. He stumbled back, his face ashen, his eyes wide with horror. "The king!" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "He's dead!" Ehud, having evaded pursuit, knew time was of the essence. He had struck a blow against the Moabites, but their grip remained strong. The death of Eglon was only the first step towards liberation. The Israelites needed to rise up and reclaim their freedom. Reaching Ephraim, Ehud sent out messengers. They spread the news of Eglon's demise and called to arms. The message was simple. "Follow me. The Lord has given your enemies into your hands." The Israelites, weary from oppression, were hesitant, their hope flickering like a candle in the wind. Could one man, even Ehud, truly have slain King Eglon? But the messengers, filled with conviction, recounted Ehud's daring act. They spoke of the left-handed assassin and the swift strike. The Israelites, stirred by this tale, felt a fire ignite within them. The response to Ehud's call was nothing short of extraordinary. From the hills of Hebron to the plains of Jezreel, the Israelites, armed with whatever weapons they could gather, flocked to Ehud's banner. Shepherds became soldiers, farmers became warriors, their desire for freedom eclipsing their fear of the mighty Moabite army. Ehud, a natural leader despite his unassuming demeanour, organised this ragtag army, instilling in them a sense of discipline and purpose. He knew that the element of surprise, so crucial in his assassination of Eglon, would be their greatest advantage in the coming confrontation. The Israelites, under Ehud's command, descended from the hills, launching a surprise attack on the Moabite garrisons scattered throughout their land. The Moabites, caught off guard, their ranks thrown into disarray by the death of their king, found themselves outmanoeuvred and overwhelmed by the ferocity of the Israelite onslaught. The battle raged throughout the day, the air thick with the sounds of clashing steel, the cries of the wounded, the roar of victory. The Israelites, their hearts filled with righteous anger, fought with a fury born of years of pent-up frustration and a deep-seated yearning for freedom. As the sun began its final descent, casting long shadows across the battlefield, the outcome of the conflict was no longer in doubt. The Moabites, their forces decimated, their spirit broken, were routed. The Israelites, led by the left-handed assassin who had dared to challenge the might of their oppressors, were victorious. The land for 80 years was free from the tyranny of Moab. Ehud's daring act, his cunning plan, his courage in the face of overwhelming odds, had not only liberated his people, but had also ushered in an era of peace and prosperity. He had shown that even the most formidable of enemies, those who seemed invincible, could be defeated with a combination of strategic brilliance, unwavering resolve, and a touch of divine intervention. Ehud's name became synonymous with courage, cunning, and unwavering faith. He was a testament to the power of one person to make a difference, to rise above their circumstances and answer the call to lead, to liberate, to inspire. His story, passed down through generations, served as a reminder that God often chooses the unexpected, the seemingly insignificant, to achieve his purposes. Ehud's story, though set in the distant past, still speaks volumes today. He wasn't a superhuman warrior. He was an ordinary man with an extraordinary task. He used his intellect, his faith, and yes, his left-handedness to answer God's call. He reminds us that God can work through anyone regardless of their perceived limitations. Ehud's legacy is one of courage, ingenuity, and faith. He dared to challenge an oppressive power, to stand up for his people when they were at their weakest. He teaches us that even in the darkest of times, a single act of courage, guided by faith, can change the course of history. His story is a reminder that God often chooses the unexpected to achieve his purposes. He sees potential where others see limitations, opportunity where others see obstacles. Ehud's left-handedness, something that might have been seen as a disadvantage, became the key to his success. So, the next time you hear the word hero, remember Ehud. Remember the left-handed judge who dared to defy an empire. His story is a testament to the power of courage, the importance of strategy, and the unwavering faithfulness of God. What are your thoughts on Ehud's daring plan and its successful outcome? Share your insights in the comments below. And if you have any questions about Ehud or any other biblical figure, feel free to ask.